I don't know if this is on topic, but if we're interested in having crowdsourced, filtering of things that do and don't make sense, it means we have to have beginning ways to have criteria and decide whether certain claims are potentially absurd. On the one hand, that means signed witnessing, like, yeah, I saw this happen. I think it requires predictions and record of predictions. And somebody saying, I think this will happen, it did and didn't, and giving people a kind of performance score. But what happens all the time with those things is this, oh, this is not how I said it would happen, and all kinds of interpretation games. And I think something that's interesting here is because language is imprecise, I would actually have a crowdsourced game about, does this circumstance fit that statement? Like, is that what you understood from that statement? And because, language is a multiplayer game, reception matters, and how people heard a prediction or how people interpreted a prediction. And basically, if people interpreted it a certain way, maybe even at the beginning, say, oh, does that mean this, that, and that? And no, that's not what I meant. And then you can, correct mistakes at
there's an interesting
the outset.
Paper about this.
Is there?
Yes, I think it was on Slashdot or something, where they gave people the exercise to reformulate comments in their own words, and then the original author, basically confirms or corrects their own comment, something like this.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
that's a very good approach. Yeah.
So yeah, I think if we're going to speak about, is that a plausible statement, we'll have to get into all this. Checking interpretation, checking, does this situation fit or not fit different people's predictions according to those interpretations, and what is the prediction score?
Aren't there any blockchain markets and stuff like this for this? I think there are projects.
Yeah, there's a lot of prediction markets, yes.
Yeah.
Prediction markets are very well known, yes. And Tetlock's been doing a lot of work with a super forecasting. And I think that, yes, super forecasters are definitely people I would think their rating should apply, right? And he's done a lot of the very interesting math about how to evaluate probabilistic predictions. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
Talking quickly about Tetlock, I'll finish my sentence. If somebody says, oh, this may happen, 20% chance, this may happen, 60% chance, this may happen, 20% chance, and then, one of those happens, how does that score for the person?
You can't be wrong. You can't be wrong, though.
No, I know, but no, it's not. See, somebody, you can still score like over many predictions on that one prediction. You're right, can be wrong. I mean, unless it's yet another possibility, right? But over many predictions, you can do a stats analysis of how often their favorite predictions matches events. So you can still assign a prediction score to a forecaster who gives these probabilistic events. And that's part of what Tetlock did, how to score people who give predictions with uncertainty, which is useful if you're going to have a prediction score and use that too.
How many people actually make predictions like that?
Well, it depends. In Tetlock's community, everybody, because that's the form that the predictions are expected to take. People are expected to weigh outcomes, like people say, okay, these are the likely outcomes and this is how I rank them, and what, yeah, it's if that's what's requested, that's what people do. I agree. Outside of that, no, but If we're going to get people to get a prediction score, then let's ask for a probabilistic prediction, because that's what should be done. Like asking people to find the right answer is wrong, actually. People
That's
should
true.
give likelihood.
Yep. Interesting stuff. Okay, is there any, like last time we came up with an agenda. I don't know if we should go through that or take the time to make progress with the argumentation model. What would you like to do? Like last time we talked about inheritance of context through specialization and deduplication and context. These were the two things I wrote down.
Right.
Yeah, that question was, yeah. I don't believe that exists or should exist, and you guys think it should, and I think if that's the case, we're probably thinking about different things. But I'd be interested to finish that conversation.
I would expect that topic not to be for the scoring day, but I don't know how rigidly we're sticking to which day is which. Felix, you're supposed to set the agenda today, I guess.
Yeah, but it depends on who's there, and I think
that is also true.
Yeah.
I'm certainly favorable to continuing yesterday's conversation. Were a few questions I would
and since Jamie is here,
actually.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm also good with continuing that conversation about context. It does interest me. And I've had a few.
So maybe we clarify the questions we had yesterday with Jamie.
Yeah.
How about that? And then see where it goes.
Great.
Yeah.
So let me actually go back to the, is that the one? No, that's the one. Too many windows. Share screen. Okay, so we started to look at giving examples of some of these proposed claims, and we started with yours because they were actually pretty easy, and I hope they're right. But one that was a bit difficult was this one, where you're saying a claim that is created in a position of another claim can be identified as opposing the relevance of that claim's position or orientation to debate. I think that was supposed to be contrasted to this. A claim that is created in a position to another claim can be identified as opposing the truth of that claim. And the formulation there is, if you're opposing the relevance, are you opposing the claim? Or are you saying, or are you just opposing the relevance? You may oppose the relevance without opposing the claim.
I see how the language is a little redundant. Yeah, so it's opposing the relevance of the claim, like spatially in the debate. So it's not opposing whether the claim is necessarily true or not, but whether or not it's true, it's irrelevant. So it's a claim that is against the claim being relevant to the debate.
Okay, that's what I thought, and I wanted to triple check. So a claim that is created, opposing the relevance of another claims. Oh God, no, I deleted too much. Claim is created in a position. Another claim. Can I say in an argument, or is that introducing a new term?
I think it's fine. I mean, it just has to be clear for us what you mean. And I think in this case, it's clear.
And I think this is a better formulation than this. And I'll put your name under this because it was your idea. And I'll delete this one. Supprimer. Okay. And so that was my example. I don't know if it fits what you think, Jamie. Again, double checking.
Okay, I'm looking. Yes-ish. I think there can be stronger arguments related to relevance. Like it could be more blatantly irrelevant, and I'd expect there to be much more blatantly irrelevant things in something that's crowdsourced.
Absolute non sequiturs.
But I mean
yes.
but that's fine.
The moon is made of cheese.
Right, exactly. And that's why my dog barks at night. It's like, what?
Yes. Do you get many of those? Seriously?
We don't, because we don't do crowdsourcing. we escape so many problems by just
no, but I mean you don't do crowdsourcing, but you get all this stuff from media, and I wonder if you get a lot of that crap in media.
We do. So we absolutely do, and that has convinced me that crowdsourcing will cause more problems than it will create solutions. Because if you look at social media threads, that's really where we find a lot of them, which is, I mean, it makes sense that that's where most of them would be. But yeah, if we're scraping Twitter, we're scraping Facebook, we're scraping Reddit, there is so much irrelevant stuff, which really made us realize that when people are communicating online and they don't have like more context of like being in person or knowing the person or something like that, they're really bringing a lot to the conversation that wasn't there organically by nature of like the post or something. So people bring a lot of irrelevant context, and it can be really difficult to make sense of unless you directly engage with them and ask them to explain, or you just do a lot of research to try and understand why the hell what they brought up was relevant. And there's usually a lot of steps in between, what someone posts that's really relevant and how it relates to the post. You really have to connect a lot of dots. And
right. By the way,
I just want to go on the record as absolutely begging to differ on your opinion that it causes more problems than it solves, but we'll just leave it at that.
That's great. And I do want to admit it is a rather big claim, and I don't have any like hard evidence. It's just anecdotal, observational stuff. So that's fine, Tim.
I think I would totally agree that it creates a lot of problems, and I would agree with Tim that, well, to compare them, we have to see how many problems it solves, and this is this is where we have to back up our claim that it also solves more problems than it creates, but I won't deny it creates them. However, I'm not sure it has to do with it being online. I noted you said online versus in person. I think it's more having to do with, media does a bit of filtering for us. So the outlandish stuff doesn't show up as much, whereas social media allows random people to say things without filter. But if it were in person, I mean, in a big crowd, you'll get crap too, in person or not.
Yeah, fair. And it depends on the community online, right? Like, if there is a small, essentially biased sample of individuals who are mission aligned, they can produce incredibly high quality content collaboratively online. Whenever I think of crowdsourcing, my bias is that I immediately think of very large crowdsourcing projects.
You think of unfiltered. And
I think of Reddit and Twitter and sometimes Wikipedia. So I just think of large crowds, but I'd imagine the CDL will grow incrementally, and so it won't necessarily be inflicted by a lot of crowd attention. And I imagine most people just are looky-loos on Wikipedia and Reddit, and they're not the ones posting, and maybe that's for the best.
Right. So the other thing we floundered on yesterday, we started to say, okay, a few of these claims are actually process, and these are ones we said, oh, that's probably more process than argumentation model. We're trying to define the domain model. But then what happened is a lot of them, I was arguing, I'm trying to remember which one I was arguing for in particular. Yeah, it's, oh yeah, it's the equivalent, no. It's when I was saying somewhere, two claims are neither equivalent nor opposites. Tim was arguing this is more process. And I said, well, a lot of these things can be used in actual arguments. Saying that something is equivalent or not equivalent can be used in argument, like A causes B, B causes C. No, sorry, A causes B, B causes C causes D, and if A and C are equivalent, then we can say that B and D are always interdependent. But if they're not, they could appear dependently. And so I'm saying arguments of equivalence can become arguments about can become arguments in the argument model. And we kind of agreed that yes, this can happen. Whether we want to model it is a distinct question. But my point is many things that look like modeling concerns are also argument content. And there's a big intermediate category there. I don't know how you feel about that.
When you say you, do you mean me?
Yes. Okay. Because we three were in the conversation yesterday, so right. You're the one whose opinion I don't have.
Well, I'm trying to think of a concrete example, and I'm having a hard time thinking of that. Like I'm trying to think of claim A support. Go ahead.
The examples I came up with was, for example, people making arguments about carbon absorption solves no, not that, sorry, albedo. Increasing the albedo could solve a global warming, the climate change problem. And well, is your notion of global warming, does it include ocean acidification? That's one of my favorites. Do we mean the same thing by global warming? So is it a proper solution?
Okay, so
yeah.
So in your example, I didn't. What you just said reminds me of just kind of like conflation or associating clusters of concepts together as being dependent in some way. But in the way that was written, it made it seem as though like one set of claims maps onto another set of claims. And so I don't know actually if it's helpful to model that out of the gate. Because I'm just imagining what the process could potentially look like for somebody making that association between things. Like how do you guys envision that to actually occur with claims supporting other claims? Would there just be like a different kind of toggle box indicator that they could check that says, this claim A and its associated claims will support claim B in all instances? Like, how does that actually look like when implemented? And it seems to be maybe a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah, I begun to think about ways to do this, and it's still very hand wavy, but I do have something to say about that, but I'll let others go into it first.
I mean, yeah, my opinion on that again was that there's a couple aspects of that. One is there's definitely a process oriented aspect of that, which is you're making those arguments in order to improve the structure of the thing itself for curation, right? You want to argue that these two things are the same, or that they should be merged, or that they should be split. Those are meta arguments, right? But that falls into process, which is why I didn't want to discuss that yet. But on the other hand, if you're designing an argument model that should be able to hold any claim, claims of claims are a type of claim. And you can say, I think claim A is more important than claim B, right? And this isn't about negation or about not being the same or whatever. This is again, a different adjective. Claim A is more important than claim B. That is a claim that can be debated, right? And so you can't model that unless you model referring to other claims. I see it in other contexts that are even more useful day to day, but I'm not sure if that's how they should be structured. I haven't gone through that thought process. One I brought up was like chain of logic, right? The fact that A is true implies B, right? Or if A, then B. Yeah, exactly. Those sorts of things. We structure them. There is a way to structure them without referring to claims. It's just part of the structure of the debate. Like you said, an argument about relevance is essentially a meta argument as one way to look at for it. These are essentially meta arguments that are built into the structure for specific purposes, right? And so any argument is actually a meta argument in the sense that any argument refers to another claim, right? It's a claim that refers to another claim, is an argument.
Two other claims, premise and conclusion.
It's a claim that it refers to two other claims, exactly. It's a claim that one claim implies something about another claim, right?
Yeah.
Another one to look at is our comparison claim, where because A is greater than B, because A is this value and B is that value, and A is greater than B, then C, right? And that depends on essentially an outcome of what we call a parameterized claim, which is A is a value. A is a value is a claim, right? And you debate, is A that value? And you can have it parameterized where A is any number between 1 and a billion or whatever. And B is a value. That's a separate claim. And you have that debate, and you have an answer to that of what is A and what is B. And then you have another claim, which is because A is that and B is the other thing, and A is greater than B, then C, right? So these are all essentially meta arguments, or they're claims that refer to other claims, right? So I see that as being needed to be supported, but the question is whether it needs to be supported in a generic form. And for that, I would want to see concrete examples that let us map it, which is what the process is. But
at some point, well, of course, I believe that it should be supported because the basic argument or relevance arguments for me take that form. At some point, I felt there was you spoke of two different things. You spoke of, basic meta claims, such as an argument is about premise and conclusion. That's a claim about claims. And at some point, you were speaking about argument schemas, right? Modus ponens is an example of an argument schema. If A implies B and A, then we can infer B. Or that's a pretty silly one, but there's a lot of argument schemas, tropes that have their own. I mean, I've been into the argumentation schemes literature. There's a whole literature and classification of those. Expert opinion, for example.
Right, and that's the what is it, the AIF argument?
Yeah. they were using an early version of that classification, not the latest. Anyway, yeah, when I said, and maybe we go back to the first topic here, when we were speaking about are things equal or not equal, or are they the same or not the same? And that's a specific case of, can we use that in an argument? And again, whether we model it or not is a bit irrelevant. And we agree that it can be useful to an argument. But what is clear for me is from a user perspective. And that is something I'm not, yes, yeah, I'm struggling with, but thinking about a lot and thinking of solutions. We have statements which are always at a certain level of generality. And one of the work we have to do is to put the statement in context, saying, oh, there's all these hidden presupposition and this hidden scope to the statement. So that's one aspect, saying, well, this statement is not as general as stated. It was probably implying, it was said in that context, so it had all these presuppositions into it and hidden defeaters and so on and so forth. And then there's the, can we generalize? That is, can we put this statement in this scope and that statement in different scope and say, well, actually, this is the same statements in two scopes, and we can hence generalize on that scope. This was observed here, it was observed there. Is it true everywhere? This was observed for this kind of thing, for that kind of thing. Is it true for this bigger class, encompassing superclass of things? And generalization is a construction of the mind, right? It's always, we are saying this is the same as that. In analogies, it's sometimes pretty big stretch. Now, some of them correspond to quote unquote natural kinds. Like we often gave the biology examples because the biology categories have a history of origin that cuts them in well-defined clades, and that is mostly known. So we can make these generic statements about biological kinds. And so sometimes we can use these natural categories to guide clustering of statements. And sometimes it's really a flight of fancy. When we speak about feedback loops in cybernetic mechanisms and in the ecosystem, it's an analogy. There's an underlying mathematical form, which is part of the process of the mind creating an abstraction. But we've chosen to say, well, what we've learned here can apply there. And look, it applies on this domain, and probably it applies on a bigger domain. You can make a point about similarity in the domain and extend that similarity. And I mean, we've been able to make these statements because we've been able to show in some cases where the mapping is more exact, such as the Volcker-Lotka equation in the case of ecology, for example. But what I'm trying to say is, at a human level, what we have is a specific case, and the specificity is not fully defined. And then somebody comes with the same sentence, which really means something else because it's another context. But we're saying, it's the same sentence, even if it reflects a different fact, actually, because it's in a different context. It's the same sentence for a reason, because there's a common abstraction. And we want to be able to say, well, when is it common? When is it not common? When is there a distinction? Is it relevant? Blah, 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 blah. So this being able to say, you're using this sentence for shortcut because we cannot make infinitely precise sentences ever. And that means it's close enough, but not the same as somebody else using the same sentence. Can we say, well, here are the other cases where that concept, that claim was made, that concept entity was named, or that causal link was posited, doesn't matter at which scale it happens. Is that the same as what you're saying? And are you willing to say this belongs to the same abstraction? Or is there something different between your case and the other case? And then what? Right? And this is really the operation. Say, a priori will assume if it's the same language, it's probably the same thing, but let's check. And if it's not the same language, it's probably not the same thing, but let's check, right? Language gives an assumption of identity, but it's falsifiable in both cases. And so what I'm saying in terms of UX is, it's a bit like the Wikipedia disambiguation, right? When you say a sentence, you should be sent to a disambiguation page where one option is, well, the thing in its vague abstract sense. By the way, here are distinctions some people made when they use that sentence. Maybe nobody did yet. You'll be the first. Or maybe you'll say, yeah, I'm okay with the vague meaning for now. And when it's confronted to special cases, I'll find if there's, well, actually, I'm using this sentence in that sense, and not that sense.
Yeah. A lot of your examples come down to people figuring out what one another means and what they like historically meant and everything. And I would say that's a totally different scope again. You're talking about something else. You're not talking about stateless, humanless argumentation map.
Oh,
you're talking about negotiating again meanings and definitions with each other, and you get into it's, yeah, I think it muddies the water again, where it's like, okay, let's just see if we can get out the basic arguments here before we're talking about is your historical definition of blah 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 the same as, I don't know, before you need a therapy session to understand why the person said that, right? Here's a concrete case that I do see you need a claim referring to another claim, which is, if you believe A, then you should believe B, right? That was what we talked about with the analogies, with like you were talking about. We talked before about analogy applying to something else, but you should be able to say, this is something that people would say is, look, if you believe, in state rights, then, and state rights is just a thing in that case. So I don't know if that's a good example, right? If you believe in the claim that states should have the right to determine what equal justice means, then you should believe this other thing. All right,
if you believe in citizen having decision power, then they need spending power, so you have to believe in taxes.
Right. So those are examples, very concrete examples, I think, of a claim referring to another claim.
Yeah, and this is what I call an example of epistemic consequence. It's not a causal link, it's an epistemic link.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting one because it is an epistemic link that is predicated in a causal link. In the sense, if people have decision power and the government has no spending power, then the decision power is perfectly moot. And there's a causal link there. And because, a government without spending power cannot do anything. So the decisions of the government have no impact on society. So the vote has no impact. So the decisions of the people have no impact. So if you believe that people should decide things that, happen in the real world, you have to believe in taxes, but it's riding on the causal link. The belief link rides on the causal link. So maybe it's not purely epistemological. If you believe in What's a more purely epistemological link? I believe in global warming is real because I trust the
I believe in science, for example.
I believe in science, yeah, and I trust more specifically the I-score methods or the satellite data or whatever it is, right, to be accurate. I believe that the I-score methods are measuring something that is relevant to measuring the global temperature. That's an epistemological link. But anyway, yeah, those are meta claims very much. But what I'm saying is there's very little that's not a meta claim. If you're saying, if you look at any argument, it's a meta claim. Premise, conclusion, the link between them is a meta claim. A relevance argument is a meta claim. This is relevant, this is not relevant, that's a meta claim.
Agreed. What exactly are we talking about? Where did this go off?
I'm not sure how we came back to meta claims. I was speaking about categories and how we build generalizations. And Tim didn't like my example of generalization because I keep referring to process. And and you don't like to think about the process, or you like to think about the finished. But the finished thing, it doesn't matter.
No, it's not that I don't like to talk about the process. It's just that we agreed the process was going to be a separate later discussion. We agreed to focus entirely on the argumentation model, which is the model of the debate to capture it all like a snapshot. So in other words, how do you capture all this information inside this model?
What I was trying to say through explaining the process at the model levels, okay, let's go through that, is that in theory, generalization can be anything. In practice, there's good and bad generalizations, they're useful and useless generalizations, but it's about saying this, and if I take this entity and that entity, I can assume a generalization that encompasses them both. Whether it makes sense or not is a different claim up to a point, but I can take anything and posit a generalization of them. There's a point where the generalization is useless and vacuous, absolutely true. But generalization is an operation of the mind. It's a group, it's a clustering operation. And the clustering is done, whether it's done by a process, by humans, by language. Language is full of generalizations. But I'm saying when we're showing arguments, there is always this link between, is this true just in this case, or is this true in a more general case? And how do we introduce more general case? How do we tie specific case to general cases? And there's many possible generalizations for any one specific. Well, I'm saying the process of linking a specific case to one or many generalizations is a grouping operation of the mind, and a way to say, well, this is what they have in common, this is how they vary, and this is why it's a valid generalization, but the grouping comes first. And I'm saying at the model level, the generalizations is probably a grouping of entities or claims or arguments, but it's a grouping operation at a fundamental modeling level.
You're not a fan of taking baby steps, are you?
No.
we need, yeah. So, but yeah, that's the bottom up process is the baby steps process, right? You're seeing way too far down the road. Problems.
You could have said that yesterday, but today's not your day.
No.
Today's Felix day.
It's
Well, okay,
50-50
but we're
today.
talking about this. Yeah. But my point being, like, you're talking about generalization. We don't have a modeling of generalizations. Right?
That's what I'm trying to talk about. Yes.
But no. But the point is, don't talk about it. Create a debate. Create an argument that is, I said this, you said that. I want to say that is a bad generalization of that, and let's put it in a square, and then we can model it. But you like, we need the concrete example before we start talking about all the different implications and problems and all the other things. We need to anchor it into a very concise and specific example so that we can do.
That should be easy to do here, right?
Yes, let's do it. I'm just saying, yeah, sure, that's your process. And yes, I'm willing to play along, but I just want to make the claim, that's your process.
No, I understand. It's it's the Tuesday process, not the Wednesday process, but we're talking about Tuesday process. We're meta
yeah.
Tuesday.
Fair enough. But it's a valid ask. That's it. Okay, so at the use case level, I want many things. I want to be able to generalize an argument by generalizing one of the underlying claims. And also I want to generalize a claim by generalizing one of the underlying entities. These are things I want to do. The opposite, which is very important, is I want to contest an argument by introducing a more specific subcases where it fails, where and I'm saying this cannot be true in general because it fails in the specific case. Same with the claim, same with the, this claim fails because it fails for this entity, which is more specific than the entity specific the claim. So I'm making many claims here. I'm making the claim that the entity is a proper, more specific case of the entity specified in the original claim, or that the claim is a proper specification or generalization, whichever way I'm going, right? And I'm claiming that the validity at one level should carry up that generalization's scale. And then that allows me to make claims about whether that claim is true generally and only in some cases, whether it's universal or not, and so on and so forth. So I'm making a series here. So it needs to be done one at a time, but I think those are already more specific than my general statement. And I hope they make sense to you and we should write them down, I agree. But does that make sense so far? Do you think that's worth writing?
Yeah, but I think we need to start small. So you need like just one concrete example, and then you can build from that, like we've been doing, right? We have the weather, the hurricanes debate, right? If you could turn that one into, what is a hurricane or something, we don't have anything about in our examples about terms and definitions and that sort of thing yet.
Actually, can we make that clear? Oh. Let me give an example of that. That's a classic, but hey, I'm not saying.
How is what you're saying, the all birds flies too general, right? In this case?
Yeah, all birds fly it's not universal.
And more specific would be all birds who...
Ostrich's fly is false. Hence, Albert's fly is not universally true.
Which
it can
is
be generally
interesting
true.
because
Though it can be
changing the
generally true.
text, if you just change the text, what you have constructed is an argument.
It's totally an argument.
Right.
It's totally
Yeah.
an argument. It's an argument through specific counterexample.
Right, but so the question here is, yes, you have made a claim, which is we cannot say all birds fly because ostriches don't fly, and it's a claim that refers to two other claims.
Yep. And I agree, it's an argument. It's totally true.
And another, is that a different structure inside the model from ostriches don't fly opposes all birds fly?
I'm also wondering that, yes.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, it's certainly, that structure would be there, but it is a different in that ostriches don't fly is also a specification of all birds fly, which is, some oppositions are not specifications. Some oppositions are, and some specifications aren't specific. Like if you have a generic statement, if I start with all birds fly, right, and I don't know yet about ostriches, I look at specific cases. Is it true in general? Well, we see that, sparrows fly and these flies and those flies, and those would all come to support, right? It's like, this is an induction reasoning. We see that, well, it seems true because this bird flies and that bird flies, and it seems to be true for a lot of cases. And then suddenly, oh, damn, ostriches. Okay, well, maybe not. But what I'm saying is the generic specific is important independent of the opposes. Like the opposes comes after, if you will. All right, that doesn't matter which one comes before or after, but you see there are two independent relations. There's the opposed relation and the specific relation. They exist independently. And like suppose we discovered this new bird. We don't know about ostriches and penguins. We discovered this new bird. We've never seen it fly. Does it fly? Does it not fly? We don't know yet. We haven't seen it fly yet, but that doesn't mean it won't. So it's, all we know is it's generic specific, and the oppose support value is undetermined until we've actually seen this bird fly, or convincingly not seen it fly ever. Right?
By the way, I have a hard stop in 5 minutes.
Okay. And I think it's important to have the generalization. I mean, that's what Jamie's doing with all.
Well, but
yeah.
here's something to think about. Remember, we like in my construction of ostriches don't fly, therefore you can't say all birds, right? Ostriches don't fly, therefore all birds fly is false, right?
Yeah.
That's the claim argument structure. And then the debate about the relevance of that is exactly the same debate. Every single argument is replicated here in the construction. We cannot say all birds fly because ostriches don't fly.
No, the relevance actually has to depend on, we accept that ostriches are birds. That's why I'm saying the generic specific link is actually part of the relevance argument.
Okay, but then you skipped a step here, in essence. Like what you would want to put as something to model is the argument, an ostrich is not a member of the bird. I don't know if it's a family or what is it, but
genus.
Essentially, an ostrich is not a bird. It's a definitional debate, which is something that is, painful topic, but
well, we can assume here that the definition of bird is agreed upon, but the status of whether ostrich fits the definition is, we're still waiting on the genetic analysis result to see if it's part of the claim.
Okay, so you have a definition for bird, right? And then you can say an ostrich is,
which is cladistic, and the ostrich may or may not be a bird, and we're still arguing about it.
Okay.
We're waiting for the lab report.
Yeah.
But
so again, that fits into, ostriches don't fly, therefore all birds fly is false. You would argue against that argument by saying an ostrich is not a bird.
That's one possible defeater, yes. Ostriches fly, we've just never seen it. That's a possible defeater. Much harder to prove or disprove. But
well, so ostriches don't fly. If you're saying no, ostriches do fly, you're arguing against the truth of the claim.
That's correct.
Ostriches
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. You are correct. Yeah, totally. Now, what I'm trying to introduce is, okay, in this case, it's a pure argument. The question is, okay, let's say, I'll give a slightly different example, which is not exactly in this case. Greenhouse gases lock in global warming of 2.5, have already locked in 2 degrees of global warming, okay? For the next century, sorry, that's important. And then we start arguing, well, actually, methane degrades faster than CO2, and if we count methane in greenhouse gases. So we're arguing again about what we include, what we don't include, and is it true, is it false that we're locked in for this period of time because the time scales are not exactly the same. But on the other hand, we've locked in some climate change with CO2, which is a claim. Is part of a larger claim, we've locked in some climate change with greenhouse gases. Again, there's a clear generalization. And it's, if you say, oh, well, CO2 we could control this way, oh yeah, but we haven't controlled methane, or vice versa. So what I'm saying is getting people to think, you're just not looking at that. Let's look at let's broaden the scope here. I think this is an essential function of the canonical debate, helping people to broaden the scope and think about the problem in broader terms than maybe the problem as stated, if it's stated too narrowly, is what I'm trying to say. So this, like saying, what is the link between CO2 locks in climate change and the broader greenhouse gases lock in climate change? And so that people would be tempted to traverse that link. There is an evidence link in this case, but even if there weren't, I'm saying there's a link worth traversing towards the generalization. That's why I'm saying generalization is worth modeling.
I agree it's worth modeling. The question is,
I need to go, guys. I'm sorry. I'll
Okay.
stop the recording. You can stay if you want, I think. Yeah. Bye.